Hi, it's Paul here from selfoutforlife.com, and in this video I'm going to cover 5 more life-changing NLP techniques. So this is the second in a 2-part video series where I've been covering a number of different NLP techniques. So if you haven't yet seen the first video, that will appear up here up the top somewhere, or there'll be a link to the video and the accompanying blog post which covers all of the 10 NLP techniques. That will be in the description below. Now in this first video I covered what NLP is, what the letters stand for, what it can be used for, how it can benefit people, and also I talked a bit about my experience with NLP. So the first NLP technique that I'm going to cover is called the well-formed outcome. So this is all about goal setting, so setting effective goals that are achievable. You might be familiar with the SMART goal process. So this is similar to this, but it takes it a step further. So you want to be creating well-formed outcomes rather than ill-formed outcomes. Now there are a number of different variations to the classic NLP well-formed outcome model. So I've looked at a few of these and I've come up with what I feel are the best components of the well-formed outcome. So the first component of a well-formed outcome is that it must be stated in the positive. So it's about what you do want rather than what you don't want. So here are a couple of examples of the right and the wrong way to do it. So the right way would be, I want to have a new, exciting and fulfilling job, as opposed to what you don't want, which could be, I really want to quit this dead-end job. Another example could be, I want to be calm and confident. That's about what I do want, as opposed to, I don't want to be anxious. Okay, so it needs to be stated in the positive about what you do want. And the reason for that is your imagination cannot process a negative I don't want. So when you think about I don't want to be anxious, your brain has to think about the feeling of anxiety. So the second component of the well-formed outcome is that the goal or outcome must be initiated and maintained by you. So it's got to be under your control. It's got to be a goal that you can own and you need to be accountable for it. And I've often talked in other videos about the difference between an outcome goal and a process goal. So an outcome goal is not directly within your control. So an example could be, I want to earn a 6-figure salary this year, or I want to lose 5 kilos this month. That's not completely within your control. What is within your control though are the steps that you can take to do that. So to earn $100,000 this year, there's probably certain things that you could do, okay, that are going to increase your chances of that happening. And if you're losing weight, you know that regular exercise and eating the right foods is going to help you do that. Won't guarantee it, but it's going to give you the best chance of doing that. So things like regular exercising, eating healthily, they're process goals that will help you achieve the outcome goal. And I've done a more detailed video on that and goal setting in general. I'll put a link in the description below and it will appear up here somewhere as well right now. Now, what can't be initiated and maintained by you is other people changing. So you can't set a well-formed outcome if it's about someone else changing, because that's not within your control. So a goal such as, I want my partner to pay attention to me, that's not directly within your control. Yes, there's things you can do to influence that, but you can't make that person pay attention to you. So the third component of a well-formed outcome in NLP is resources. So what are resources? Resources can be either specific skills that you need or emotional resources. So think about what you need to achieve that goal. And if you don't have that, ask yourself, how can I get those specific skills, or how can I develop the emotional resources that I need to achieve that? And one of those emotional resources might be having a really clear why. So why do you really want this goal, and listing all the reasons why. That will help you develop those positive emotional states. And also, to keep you going on the road to achieving that goal, it's often good to know what your values are. What is it that's going to keep you going, and why is this goal important? The fourth component is sensory-based evidence. So what will I see, hear, feel, taste and touch when I've achieved this goal? What will I see, hear, feel, taste and touch that tells me I'm on track to achieving this goal, or tells me that I've gone off track? So that's really, really important. I would also include a time frame under sensory-based evidence as well. So some examples of sensory-based evidence could be, I have the book written, it's 200 pages and I'm holding it in my hand. It's ready to be published. That could be a goal. It could be, I'm on the scales today, I look at the scales and it says 60 kilos or less. So that's very sensory-based as well. Or I have X money in the bank. Okay, you can look at your bank statement online and you can see that money in the bank. So again, very sensory specific. So the next component is context. When and where do I want this goal? And also, when and where do I not want this goal? So maybe I want to be a super confident salesperson. Well, that's going to be great in a business context, but maybe when I'm with my partner at home, I don't want to be that super confident, extroverted person. So think about the context of life, the areas of life where you want to achieve that goal or that skill, but maybe there's some areas where it just wouldn't be appropriate. So the final component of the NLP well-formed outcome is ecology. So this is about the effect that achieving your goal might have on other people and also the world in general. So for example, what will achieving this goal cost me in terms of my health, relationships, time and money? So if you want to achieve a specific business goal, how's that going to affect your health if you're working very long hours? How is it going to affect your relationships and your friendships and that kind of thing, your family life? So it's important that you consider all those kind of things. How's it going to affect the world in general? Maybe there's an influence there. So it's important that you look at all the advantages of achieving that goal, but also consider all the possible disadvantages. What will you not have if you achieve that goal? What else might you lose or sacrifice? And also, what else might you gain that you haven't thought of? So these could be positive things that you might gain, but they could also be things that you weren't expecting, maybe undesirable things. So what else could you gain from achieving that goal that you hadn't thought of? So the next NLP technique that I'm going to cover is called submodalities. Now, in part one of this video, I talked about representational systems. These are basically the way we think based on our five senses. So we have visual through our eyes, we have auditory, so what we hear, we have kinesthetic, which is our physical sensations and also our internal feelings as well. We have olfactory, which is what we smell, and we have gustatory, which is what we taste. And in NLP, these are called modalities. And this is not to be confused with treatment modalities. That's something quite different. So submodalities are the smaller components within each modality. And the best way to describe that is to give you some examples. So for the visual modality, some of the submodalities would include brightness. So is the image really bright in your mind, or is it very dim? Also colour, so is it in glorious technicolor or is it more in black and white? Is it big or small, so is it very large in your mind or is it very, very small? Is it a still image or is it more like a movie? And is it associated or disassociated? So what do I mean by that? So if it's associated, it means you're seeing it through your own eyes. If it's disassociated, it means like you're seeing it in a movie, so you're seeing yourself in a movie in that situation. Now, the stronger these submodalities are, the stronger your feelings will be, and that can be a good or a bad thing. So if it's a very pleasurable thing that you're imagining, if it's in glorious technicolor and it's in a movie and it's very bright, then you're going to have really nice positive feelings. But if it's something you're really scared of, let's say a fear of spiders, now, if you're seeing that spider in full colour, it's moving, it's very close, you're associated, you're seeing it through your own eyes, then that's going to give you that fear response. So one of the things you can do to help reduce the fear of things like that, so anything you're scared of, is to reduce and change the submodalities. So, for example, if you make that image very small in your mind, if you change it from a movie to a still image, if you make it black and white, if you disassociate, so you're seeing yourself looking at the spider, that will really turn down those feelings. Now also, if it's a movie and it's something you're scared of, you can play the movie backwards. This can be incredibly effective. So there's actually a whole technique called the rewind technique in NLP. I won't cover it in this video, but I will do another video on that because that's a really, really helpful process if you want to deal with any kind of trauma or any kind of uncomfortable feeling where it stems from a vivid imagination. Now for the auditory modality, some of the submodalities would include the volume of the sounds, the speed, is it fast or slow, the tonality, this is particularly important for speech, and the type of voice, is it coming from a man, a woman, someone with a heavy accent, even in a different language. Now, the auditory submodalities apply to external sounds that you're imagining or remembering, but also to internal dialogue or self-talk as well. So if you have self-talk that's very critical and it's giving you negative feelings in some way, then you can do things like slow down that internal voice. You can make it quieter. You could change who that voice is. If it sounds like it's coming from a man, you could change it to a woman's voice. If it sounds like it's a very authoritarian teacher, you can change it to maybe a playful voice, something like that. You can change the accents. So there's lots of things you can do with submodalities to reduce the impact of negative internal dialogue. Now, for the kinesthetic modalities, so this is feelings and physical sensations, there's lots of submodalities for that one as well. So such as temperature, is it hot or is it cold? Texture, is it rough or is it smooth? Weight, does it feel heavy or does it feel light? Is whatever the feeling or sensation, is it moving or is it still? Intensity, is it really strong or is it very weak? And also the location in your body as well. So again, you can change those. Now, there are submodalities for olfactory, that's smell, and gustatory, that's taste. But those submodalities tend not to influence things anything like as much as visual, auditory, and kinesthetic do. So I won't cover those in this video. Now, if you've already watched my first video where I covered the first 5 NLP techniques, you'll know that what I don't want you to do is just learn about them. I want you to experience them as much as you can. And submodalities is one of these techniques that you can experience. So what I'm going to do now is take you through an exercise that you can actually follow along to. So assuming you're not driving or doing anything that requires your full concentration, what I'd like you to do is to participate in this exercise with me right now. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about a positive, happy memory. So I'll just give you a few seconds just to think about a really nice, positive, happy memory. Okay, hopefully you've got something by now. If you haven't, you can pause the video while you think of something. Now, this may be easier to do with your eyes closed, maybe, it's up to you. But what I want you to do is start to visualize that in your mind and really look at the visuals. See if you can make this brighter in your mind. See if you can make it more colorful. See if you can make it larger in your mind. If it's still, make it start moving. Okay? Ensure that you are associated, so you're seeing it through your own eyes. So if you're seeing yourself in this movie, step into it so you're seeing it through your own eyes. Okay? Then notice any auditory. So are there other people there? Are they maybe complimenting you? Are there other sounds? Maybe it's the sound of your own voice that you can hear. And then notice any kinesthetic sensations. So are there any actual sensations, or is it more the internal feelings you're noticing inside? So just begin to notice what those are. So notice what you're seeing, making that larger, making it faster, making it really, really bright, enhancing any of the sounds, other people, yourself, any other sounds you can hear. Maybe the sounds of people cheering, something like that. Maybe it's the sound of someone giving you a compliment. And then just noticing the physical sensations as well, and just making those really, really, really ramping those up as much as you can. Okay. And once you've done that, you can open your eyes if you've closed your eyes, and just do a bit of a break state, just a bit of a shuffle around. That's it. Okay. So now what I want you to do is I want you to think about an unhappy memory or something that you're afraid of. Okay, so some kind of unhappy memory, something that makes you feel a bit bad when you think about it in some way. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to reduce the submodalities for this. So again, you've probably got something in your mind by now, but if you haven't, you can always pause the video. Okay, and again, you might find it easier to close your eyes when you're doing this, entirely up to you. Okay, so with that memory in your mind now, think about, notice what you can see in your mind. Okay, and what I want you to start doing is I want you to start to reduce the visuals. Okay, so if it's really, really bright, start to make it dimmer. Okay, if it's in color, make it more like black and white. Okay, make it smaller, make it seem like it's like a little postage stamp. If it's a movie, turn it into a still image. And if you're associated, you're seeing it through your own eyes, change to being disassociated. So that means you're seeing yourself in the movie. Okay. And then notice the sounds. So reduce any sounds you can hear. Sometimes it's quite nice to imagine like a volume control on a remote or on a TV or a radio, and just imagine just turning that down and noticing the sounds going down as you're doing that. Okay, so just reducing any sounds, including the sound of your own internal dialogue. So if you're noticing that, just turning that right down as well. And then reducing any of the kinesthetic sensations. okay, and changing those around, just noticing how that works as well. And again, when you're ready, you can open your eyes, have a little bit of a wiggle around just to break state. Oh, that's good. So what did you notice when you did this with a happy memory? And what did you notice when you did this with a sad or unpleasant memory? Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. So the third NLP technique that I'm going to cover in this video is called the Swish Pattern, and this is one of the most powerful NLP techniques. It's one of the very first ones I ever discovered, and the great thing about the Swish Pattern, or its purpose, is to help you change an unwanted behavior or an unwanted habit. So any situation where you find you naturally do a behavior that you don't want, or you do a certain habit, the Swish Pattern is really good for changing that. So examples could be changing social anxiety to social confidence, better eating choices, procrastination, but it's great for habits, so things like nail biting, for instance. And the way it works is when your mind thinks about the old pattern, it immediately changes to the new pattern. So once you've done the Swish technique a few times, your mind will instinctively think of the new pattern, not the old one. Now, the Swish Pattern is one that I want you to do with me. It's one I want you to really experience. Again, you can't learn this one intellectually, you've actually got to do it. So think about an unwanted behavior or an unwanted habit that you'd like to change. Okay, hopefully something's coming to mind as I'm talking. So an unwanted habit or an unwanted behavior that you'd like to change. Okay, hopefully you got something now. So what I want you to do now is just close your eyes down and just imagine that old behavior or habit. Okay, and notice and amplify the submodalities one by one. So notice what you can see. Play around with the brightness, the speed, whether it's movie or still. Same with the auditory, so what you can hear, so making it louder, faster, that kind of thing. And also the kinesthetic as well, so what the feelings are at the moment. And if relevant, maybe smell and taste as well, bring those in. And then notice any feelings and emotions that come up as you do that. And also any negative self-talk as well. So for example, if you wanted to change the behavior of eating ice cream in the fridge, just imagine what that's like at the moment if you were doing that behavior, what you'd be seeing, feeling, what you'd be tasting. Okay, now I'm going to call this the cue image. So this is like the negative image, the thing we want to change. So I'm going to call this the cue image. Okay, so now you can open your eyes and again just have a bit of a shake around, just break state. Okay, and as you do that, you'll notice that a negative image just fades into the background and is replaced by a blank screen. So now, if you haven't already, think about what you'd like the new behavior or habit to be instead. So if it's instead of eating ice cream, maybe it's eating an apple. Okay, so once you've got that in your mind, close your eyes again and imagine yourself doing that new behavior. Notice what resources you have. So maybe it's confidence, maybe it's control, maybe it's self-belief. And then begin to amplify the submodalities of this new image one by one. So again, what can you see, making that brighter, making that more colorful, what you can hear, making that louder, amplifying any positive self-talk as well, and also amplifying any other feelings. And noticing what feelings and emotions come as you do that. Now I'm going to call this the new image. So what I now want you to do is to shrink this new image down to the bottom right corner of the screen in your imagination. Now technically it can be any corner. We'll use the bottom right corner for this example. And as you do that, you'll notice that the cue image, i.e. the old behavior, will reappear. So you're going to see the old image with this new image in the bottom right corner. So in a moment, not just yet, I'm going to say the word swish. And when I say the word swish, that new image that's in the bottom right corner is going to blast through the old cue image, and you're going to see this new image of you doing the new behavior. It's going to be really bright, it's going to be large, it's going to be really vivid, and it's going to be really colorful. Okay, so you're ready? Let's do it. So close your eyes down and imagine a blank screen. And on that screen, then imagine the image of the behavior that you want to change. So I'm going to call that the cue image. So the cue image, the behavior you want to change. And in the bottom right hand corner, see like a postage stamp size of the new image. Okay, so now as I say swish, you notice that positive image blasting through the old negative cue image and appearing bright and vivid. So really bright, vivid, positive image of this new behavior. Okay, so now just blank the screen, so just returning to like a blank screen. Bring up that cue image again. Okay, and then seeing the new image in the bottom right corner as like a postage stamp size. Then swish, noticing a really, really bright image blasting through the old image, seeing that new image now really, really bright and vivid. Now blank the screen, bring up the cue image again in your mind and see that new image in the bottom right corner. Swish, the new image blasts through the old cue image and is bright and vivid. That's it, that's good. Blank the screen one more time, bring up the old cue image, the new image is down in the bottom right corner. Swish, the new image blasts through the old image and becomes bright and vivid. Let's do it one more time for good luck, even faster this time. So bring up a blank screen, now bring up the cue image, the new image down in the bottom right corner. Swish, the new image blasts through the old image and appears bright and vivid. Okay, well done, you can open your eyes now. Okay, so the key with the swish technique is repetition, but let's test it and see what happens. So what I want you to now do is bring up that negative cue image, okay? Just bring it up in your mind now, and what do you notice? Okay, what you should begin to see is either the image is less intense, or ideally you see the positive image coming in its place. So as soon as you think of the negative image, the positive image automatically comes in its place. Now if that doesn't happen yet, repeat it more times, okay, and faster each time. Sometimes it can take sort of 10 or 15 times to do this, but it's really, really worth it if you want to replace an old habit automatically. Another thing about the swish pattern is it does take some practice to get good at it. So, you know, do persevere with it, make it part of your morning routine, do it regularly, and you'll get better at it over time. So the fourth NLP technique is all about language, and NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. So the L is all about language. That's a really, really important part of NLP. And under language, there's actually two models. There's the meta model, which is about very specific use of language. And then there's the Milton model, which is about very general, vague language. Okay, and these two models came from modeling very successful therapists. You remember NLP came about by modeling successful people, and what Richard Bandler and John Grinder found was when they modeled very successful therapists, they were very, very specific about the language. The type of questions they used were very, very specific, except for one person who was Milton Erickson, a very successful, famous hypnotherapist, the father of modern hypnotherapy. He did the opposite. He used very vague language. So I'll give you some examples of how they both work in a moment. So I'll start with the meta model. This is about very specific and precise use of language. Now, as I mentioned in part one of this NLP video series, where I talked about reframing, we can't take in all information consciously. It's impossible. All the information that comes in through our senses, if we tried to process and deal with that, we'd just be overwhelmed all the time. Okay, so instead we delete things, we distort things, and we generalize. So by deleting, we pay attention to what's important to us, what's valuable to us, and we ignore everything else. Or we ignore it consciously anyway. Subconsciously, we do take in more of that information. And it's important that we do that because otherwise we'd just be too overwhelmed and we wouldn't be able to make any types of decisions. So to give you an example of that, if you think now about the sensation of your right foot, okay? Now you're thinking about the sensation of your right foot. Okay, your right foot was always there, that sensation was always there, but because I mentioned it, you started becoming consciously aware of it. Okay, so that's how we delete things. So the second thing we do is we distort things. That means we misinterpret the sensory information coming in. Remember, all this information comes in through our five senses. So what we do is we give it an incorrect meaning, or we perceive it incorrectly. Some examples of that could be being frightened by a harmless situation, or misunderstanding what another person says. And the third thing that we do is we generalize. So this is taking in old information and applying it to other scenarios or situations. So it's applying the learning from one thing to other situations or scenarios. Now, if it's a negative or a bad experience, let's maybe say that you went to the dentist once and you had a bad experience maybe as a child, then you'll generalize that into every dentist is going to be a bad experience and one I want to avoid. Now, if in the past you've had a difficult relationship or your parents had a difficult relationship when you were a child, then you might generalize that to being all relationships are difficult and you'll be wary of relationships in the future. So the meta model is a set of questions to help recover deleted information, remove distortions, and challenge generalizations. Now, to me, they're very similar to cognitive distortions or thinking traps. That's part of the cognitive behavioral therapy process. And I've covered that in another video, which will appear up here right now, or there'll be a link to that video in the description below. So there's lots of meta model questions. So I'll give you some examples here, just some very brief examples. I could easily do a whole video on the meta model, and maybe I'll do that in the future. So to deal with and recover deletions, you could, let's say an example is someone says, I don't feel comfortable with this person. So you might say, well, what is it about this person that makes you feel uncomfortable? And that person will then answer with some more specific information that they've not thought about. Okay. Now for a distortion, an example of that might be, Jack doesn't like me. Okay. So you might ask, well, how do you know that? And his answer could be, well, he doesn't return my phone calls. Okay, so the distortion there is Jack doesn't like me because he doesn't return my phone calls. Now you could ask more information. You could say, well, what else could this mean? So Jack not returning phone calls could mean other things, like he's just really, really busy at the moment. Okay, so for a generalization, someone might say something like, everyone says that about me. Okay, now you could challenge that by saying, everyone? And the person will say, well, no, not really. It's just my mum and my sister. Okay, so they've gone from generalizing everyone to just a couple of people. So they were three just really quick examples of meta model questions to help recover deleted information, deal with distortions and generalizations. So the total opposite of the meta model is the Milton model. And as I mentioned, this was developed by the father of modern hypnosis, Milton Erickson. And this is about using really vague language. And the idea is if you say something very vague, the person can fill in the meaning. Okay, and this is very, very common in hypnosis. So here's some examples, and you can just go along with these as I say them. So imagine your favorite peaceful place, a place where you can relax completely. Okay. Now, as I'm saying that, you'll be imagining something. You might be imagining a beach, you might be imagining a really nice country garden, you might be imagining out in nature, you might be imagining having a massage, okay? So the language is very vague, it's allowing you to fill in your own meaning. Another example could be, I wonder how differently you can begin to feel now. There's a presupposition there anyway that you're going to feel different, okay? But it's very vague, you know, there's lots of different ways you could feel differently. Or when you relax deeply, it becomes easier to achieve whatever you put your mind to. Okay, so it's saying relax deeply, you can achieve anything you put your mind to. So that could be anything. That could be a new relationship, that could be better health, that could be a new career, could be the $100,000 a year goal, anything like that. So again, you can put your own meaning to that. Okay, so that's the Milton model, just covered very briefly. So the fifth and final NLP technique that I'm going to cover in this video is called Perceptual Positions. And this is a great technique to help you understand others and also understand yourself more as well. And this is all about the way that people perceive information and how their perception might be quite different to your perception. Okay, so if you can know about the way other people think and feel about things, that can be really, really useful in communication and relationships. So this technique will help you reduce conflicts with others. It will help you deal with or get over a past conflict or upset with another person. So you can use this to deal with past conflicts. You can use it to deal with something that's happening right now. And you can also use it to predict how somebody might respond to something that you want to ask them in the future. Okay, and I'll come on to that in a moment. Now, the NLP Perceptual Positions technique consists of 3 perceptual positions. So the first position is you, so seeing it through your own eyes. The second position is the other person, so seeing it from their eyes, perceiving it as them. And the third position is that of an observer. So that could be as a friend, it could be a work colleague, it could be a family member, somebody like that. Now, when you do the perceptual positions exercise, it's really effective if you can use physical spots on the floor, so different spots for each of the three people, or even better, different chairs. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do right now. So this example, I'm going to do asking the boss for a pay rise. Okay, so first I'm going to do this as me. So me, I'm going to be over here. Okay, so now I'm going to think about this whole thing from my view. So this should be easiest to do. So I'm going to think about all the reasons why I deserve a pay rise. So all the great work I've done, the recognition, all that kind of thing. Maybe I'm going to think about other reasons I need a pay rise as well, how long I've been with the company, the value I can offer. So all the reasons why I believe I need a pay rise. Okay, maybe I'll even look at what other people in other roles in other companies are paying. Maybe I'll do some research on the internet and get the likely salary for that job, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's me, first position. That's the position as me. So now I'm going to pretend I'm the other person, in this case the boss. So I'm going to use a different spot on the floor for this. I'm going to go over here. So this is now as the boss. Okay, so now one really great thing you can do here is adopt that person's physiology, that body language. So if there's a certain mannerism that your boss has, just begin to just get that in your body. That can just help really see it from their perspective. Okay, so now they're hearing you saying, I want a pay rise. Okay, so what might they be thinking? They'll probably be thinking about your performance, how you've done on recent projects. They may be thinking about other people in their team, the salary they're on, that if they give you a pay rise, is that going to affect other people? They might be thinking about budgets, okay, the budget for this year. They're also going to be thinking about, okay, well, if I don't give this person a pay rise, what's going to happen? He might leave. Okay, now if that person leaves, I need to recruit someone else, got to train someone else. That could be expensive, that could be time consuming, things like that. They may be thinking about you as a person. Okay, so lots of different things that person will be thinking. Okay, so that's the boss. And then the third position is an outside observer. Okay, so I'm going to be in the middle for this one. So this one could be maybe a work colleague. Okay, so someone of a similar level. Okay, so what might they be thinking about your performance? Do you really perform as well as you say you do? Okay, that kind of thing. Maybe compared to them, they'll have more of a detached perspective. Okay, so just viewing it through that person's eyes, seeing you asking the boss responding, and just seeing what other information you can get from that more observer, fly on the wall type position. Now, once you've finished with the observer position, what you want to do is you want to step back into you. Okay, so where you would be, and then take in all that information. So the information I got from my boss over there, the information I got from the observer, how might that make me change how I ask for this request? What objections could I now have questions or answers for, so that I can be more persuasive and more influential? Okay, so always return back to first position and take in all that new information when you finish the exercise. Now, one thing I actually forgot to do just then, but I'll do in a moment when I guide you through this exercise, is breaking states. So when you go from first position to the second position, the boss, you want to just shake it out a little bit before you do that. Now, actually, if you're going from one position to another position on the floor or a different chair, that kind of breaks the state anyway. Now, as I've mentioned a few times now, I really want you to experience these NLP techniques rather than just know about them. So this is another one you can experience. So I want you to think now of a scenario that involves someone else. This could be something in the past, or this could be something that you need to deal with in the future. And then decide who the observer will be. Okay, so who's going to be the observer? And then pick 3 spots on the floor or 3 chairs to represent each perceptual position. So now step into the first position and review the situation as you. What are your thoughts? How does the other person make you feel at the moment? What are your choices? What are your options? Notice what you're seeing, notice what you're hearing. Perhaps look at the other person, notice their facial expression. Notice some of the words they might say, hear those words in your mind. Okay, then break state, shake it out a bit. Now become the other person. Okay, so I've just stepped into their spot. So take on their body posture or their physiology if you can. Notice their head position, notice their shoulders. See it through their eyes and hear it through their own ears. Get a sense of their thoughts and feelings in response to your request. What else might be going on in the mind of this person? What else might they want to consider? So now shake that off and step into the spot of the observer. Okay, so take on their body posture if you can, okay, and then see it through their eyes and hear it through their ears. Get a sense of their thoughts and feelings in relation to your request, your response, your behavior, and also that of the other person as well. And being that more emotionally detached, what else might they consider that you or the other person hasn't? Okay, then break state and then go back into you, so the first position, and notice what new ideas, different perspectives you now have that you didn't have before, and how you now feel emotionally about the situation and the other person, how different that now feels, and how would you now act based on this new information. So this concludes part 2 of my 2-part video series on NLP techniques. So just to summarize, we covered the well-formed outcome, so how to set effective goals using NLP. We then covered submodalities, so how to change the little components of what we see, hear and feel. That then led on to the Swish Pattern, so really useful technique for changing unwanted behaviors and turning them into something positive in a very automatic way. We then covered the L in NLP, linguistic language, and we looked at 2 models, the specific meta model and the artfully vague Milton model. And then we finished off with the 3 perceptual positions. Now, if you haven't already watched part 1 of this video where I cover 5 more powerful NLP techniques, then there's a link to that in the description below. There's also a link below to the blog post which covers all 10 of these NLP techniques. So if you enjoyed this video, do give it a like, give it a thumbs up, and do leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. And do subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and click the bell notification. And also go and check out my website, that's selfhelpforlife.com. On there you will find the written versions to many of these YouTube videos, and also a link to my podcast and social media channels as well. So I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye for now.